Good afternoon and welcome to the next in the series of YouthLink Scotland's online youth work webinars. I'm Liz Green and today I'm joined by Dr. Alicja Pawluczuk, who's going to share with us information and her thoughts on the sort of disinformation around COVID-19 and the sort of data literacy and critical thinking that we can foster in young people as youth workers. So the format is there'll be a presentation, then an opportunity for participants to ask questions at the end. So over to you.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to wash my hair this morning and put some makeup on. So this is a bit of an event nowadays. So thank you very much. And this is going to be a very short presentation with lots of information packed into it. So I'll try to quickly cover everything in 15 minutes, so then we have enough time for questions. Let me just quickly start with introducing myself. So my name is Alicja and I currently work for the United Nations University. I run a charity, a social enterprise called Digital Bees, which kind of focuses on digital literacy and data literacy. And we do quite a lot of digital youth work as well in Scotland. So the key question for today is there a magic solution to disinformation? And I'm assuming you probably know the answer to this, that the answer is no. And I'm obviously not going to be able to resolve all of your problems or give you the perfect practice for digital youth work and disinformation, especially nowadays when these problems are so huge. But if you are going to take away one thing from this presentation, then I would say just remembering the 20-second rule. So we all talk about the 20-second rule now, which is you wash your hands for 20 seconds. I would argue that we should all be taking the 20-second rule and place it in a digital context as well. And within this disinformation landscape, which is so intense nowadays, let's all commit to the 20-second where we just quickly check the source of the information or who's shared it or, is it a joke, and consider some of the things that I will cover later on as well. So so if you're happy with the 20-second rule, you can leave now. That's all the learning for today. No, there's gonna be more. So moving on to the young people, I mean, it's been proven that young people are specifically affected by the disinformation landscape at the moment. So the research, recent research kind of found out that 75% of young people felt that social media is an important source of news, despite feeling it is least trustworthy. And I think it is important to look into how young people receive and consume news nowadays. And there has been quite a lot of information in research and in recent publications about young people primarily using social media for their news. So news is not longer this one thing, for channel news for me. That's something that I do on a regular basis. But for young people, these habits are different. So you might argue that news are interconnected with everyday information from friends, family, social media influencers. So news is just an element of it. And it also seems that young people find it quite, not really, checking news is probably not the most exciting thing. So this piece of research shows that consuming news can feel a little bit like a chore. So many people say that news come to young people now. They don't go and seek out the news come into their timeline. And that's going to be the battle for young people's attention in the future. How do you make news trustworthy but also entertaining at the same time? So in terms of the COVID situation that we have at the moment, there is some interesting results from some surveys that have been made over the last month. And this study from Ofcom shows that up to 52% of young people find it hard to decide if the information that they see is false or true. But at the same time, 58% are able to identify that something is fake news. So so I would say that there is good news and bad news. There is a struggle for realizing what is definitely true or false, but at the same time, young people are critical. They're critical and confused, but are they truly critical or cynical? Because I feel that there's many of us who are just simply cynical nowadays, and we don't kind of consider any information that doesn't come from truthful, from reliable or popular sources as misinformation. So there is a bit of a issue there with the balance between being critical but not cynical. So how do we achieve that? And how do we help young people to develop that mindful news consumption practice? So this is a project that I have been working on over the last year, and this is where we're moving on to kind of data literacy area. So data literacy meaning, you know, how do young people source information online? How do they share it? Who do they trust when they share their personal information online? And this is a very interesting group that we found in our research, which is primarily young people, but not all young people. These are young people from lower socioeconomic classes, and we call them social and media users. And these are the users that are primarily using social media and media in general online. And I'm not going to go over all of these statistics, but an interesting thing is that they are least likely to trust the news, but at the same time, they're the group that is most likely to trust what their friends share online. So they are the group that are most trustful when it comes to sharing their information with the big tech companies, but also relying more on what their friends say on social media and the comments section, perhaps, you know, to source information. So this is just the situation that we are in, and this is obviously bad news. There is quite a lot of disinformation, but there is an element of some good news as well, which I found somewhere yesterday, and that's the fact that there has been a huge increase in fact-checking services. So if you compare the time before COVID and now, you have way more resources that you can use to fact check, and there's more options for us out there. So let me just briefly go through this section, which is just showing different types of disinformation and misinformation. You know, it's not very simple. We cannot clearly say that all this information is there to harm us. That's not the case. And I would definitely recommend the firstdraftnews.org for any graphics like these. If you want to use them in your workshops or in your digital youth practice, they have a whole range of interesting stuff. And so you can see here, there is different types of false information. Some of which is intent to harm. Some of it is just a joke, or, you know, like misleading content or a false connection. So also from the same organization, First Draft, they identified different types of mis and disinformation. And I'm sure you can just quickly have a look through them and identify some of the things that you might have recently come across on your social media. So there is the satire or a parody, there is false context, there is manipulated content, there is fabricated content. It's really, I think it might be useful to use these to kind of maybe show some of your young people that there are different types of false content out there. And what's also very important is that sometimes you've got these websites which are and look 90% true, and it's only the 10% of the content which could be misleading or misrepresented. So it's really about this sort of mindful approach and critical approach to do media consumption. And one of the most interesting thing about the recent debate on the misinformation in COVID is that there has been some posts from celebrities, public figures, and also influencers, which is a big thing for young people nowadays on social media. And it's interesting to see that it's not a huge problem, because it's only 20, like from this study that I read, only 20% of the accounts that spread sort of misinformation, only 20 of them were actually linked to celebrities or figures, prominent figures. But the actual engagement with that content, the clicks, the likes, you know, the shares, that's when that content becomes a little bit dangerous, and it can be quickly becoming implemented into our minds because it becomes so viral. So one of the things to remember is to probably take a critical look at some of the influencers that are out there as well, which is not always the case, because it's good to mention here that there are also amazing positive influencers who are also sharing amazing and very important work around COVID as well. So apologies for some of the spelling problems here. I've transferred the file into PowerPoint and it just changed the style. So this was supposed to be the emoji just here. It becomes something, yeah, it's something different now, but I'll allow you to use your imagination to have your own interpretation of what that is. I'm talking about the little yellow dot. So the proposition here for your digital youth work practice, this is where I've sort of created 5 different ideas for activities that you could use with young people in your work, you know, using the technologies that you use to engage with them. And I think this idea of being a fake news hero, shiro, and actually not liking, not reposting could be an idea to start with, okay? So promoting this positive citizenship around disinformation. So one of the things that I wanted to add to that as well is that sometimes we might feel a little bit helpless and, you know, insecure and scared in this situation. And some of my friends said, oh, I would like to help, but I don't know how to help. I don't know what to do. Is there anything that I could do apart from staying at home? And I would suggest that, yeah, not reposting stuff, not liking, not adding to the disinformation you know, landscape that is out there. That's something that you could practically do to help out with how things are at the moment. So maybe that's something that you could emphasize in your workshops as well. So what can you do in the 20 seconds that I outlined at the beginning of this presentation? Well, you can check these 5 things. You could, you know, check, is it a joke? You can check the author and the date. You can check the source. You can check if the story has been posted elsewhere online. And you could use some of the fact-checking websites that are out there. And Full Fact is probably my favorite one for what's going on in Britain at the moment. So maybe pick some of these activities. Not all of them can be obviously covered in 20 seconds, but still some possibilities for you to be creative. So the first idea for youth work, for digital youth work on disinformation is the gamification of disinformation. And there are lots of amazing resources out there. One of which is the Welcome to the Troll Factory. It's a really interesting game. You become you are sort of on the other side of the disinformation landscape, where you are encouraged to produce disinformation and understand how these things work in practice. So I've provided you a link at the bottom of the slide. This is going to be shared, so you can just use that link. But apart from the Welcome, the Troll Factory game, there's also additional 7 games on fake news, and there's a link below that as well, which you can get later on as well. So have a look at these games. They're aimed at different group ages and different abilities. And one of the things with the Troll Factory, I had some feedback last week. There is some swearing in that game, so just be aware of that if that's something that if you don't want young people to experience. But it is aimed at young people in general. So the second idea for your youth work practice, how about becoming fake news detectives? And there are lots of activities out there where, and this is what I would recommend, Newswise, from The Guardian, and they propose different activities on how to become a fake news detective. And I think especially nowadays, having a session on what young people have seen on their timelines, what disinformation what types of disinformation have affected their families, maybe something was discussed in the family around the table, and being a detective taking on that proactive approach and encouraging that through digital youth work practice might be another good idea for some sessions that you want to facilitate. So introducing fact-checking. I know this might be a difficult one. I don't think fact-checking is the most exciting thing to do, but there is some interesting things on full fact, and I would probably suggest using the viral posts on Facebook as an example to see what content becomes viral on social media. Not that many people use Facebook nowadays. I'm not sure about the young people that you work with, but I've heard that young people are removing themselves from Facebook. But still, it might be a good idea to see how social media has become polluted with some disinformation. Youth work idea 4. So this is the tricky tricky one. Like, why should we fact check anyway? It is boring. It is extra work. How can we ground this in our personal experience? And one of the things that I've learned from some young people that I worked with and some of the research that I've done is that if you remove the activity from young people's life, if you make it very abstract, and if you use the terminology that I'm using now, that's probably not gonna really sort of help them to feel the need for fact checking. But you are the best people to know how to work with the young people that you work with, and how could you possibly place it in their personal context, in the things that they care about. And one of the examples that I have got here is, thinking about climate change, that this is their future. And if they do want to care about that particular issue, then there is this little quiz that I've also added here. No, sorry, it's not a quiz. It's just a website where you can kind of learn about the different types of disinformation around climate change. But making it, focusing on the context and making it relevant to the young people is probably the most important thing when it comes to things like that. Because scare stories don't work in this context. So, okay, so so I've got another minute, hopefully, and they'll have questions. So the 5th idea that I have is to think about the emotional side of not liking things and not sharing things. I can say all these things about becoming a fake news hero or shiro, but I do realize that the social media landscape for young people must be totally different to what I experience. I'm happy to point out when something isn't right, or if I don't agree with something, but I also realize that the young people their social media experiences are all different, and some of the time they might feel under pressure to like things, to repost things, or not to engage with the content in a critical way, so not criticize the posts that are out there. So perhaps this is something that could be discussed in one of your sessions. I know this links to a broader idea of digital literacy and data literacy, but it's just an idea for you to take away from this very quick, short session. So the last slide is just kind of returning to the idea of data literacy. And some of you might find it helpful, but I don't know. This is the project that I worked on recently. And this is something that might help you to think about the different skills that you might focus in your work. So this is this idea of data citizenship. So how do you become an active data citizen? And as a young person, how do you engage with this very complex world of information that is out there? And so here, and also if you go to the website, which has got a list of useful resources that you can use during your sessions for fact-checking and also for data literacy. There are different types of skills, and I would say that you might want to take just a few minutes to look over them and perhaps pick some of them and play around in your activities. So I know there's, for instance, data visualization and manipulation. There has been lots of examples of using, memes or deep fakes with fake videos. So playing around with, so these could just serve as an idea for a topic for a digital youth work session. So this is me. I'm done within 20 minutes. I hope that you found some of it useful. And this is my website for both for my personal website, but also for Digital Beats. You're more than welcome to kind of contact me if you have any questions. And also we are trying as Digital Beast to facilitate sessions for young people free of charge. So if you need help, I'm also happy to have that conversation. Yes, so thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, Alicja. That was so interesting, and lots of things to think about. And thank you for giving us some practical tips as well about actually what could we do to try to help be part of the solution to this. Really, really appreciate it.